All right, so there were a couple of things left from the in-class lecture we did last week that I wanted to try to hit today or over the weekend so that we can talk about these or we can work on them in the worksheet on Tuesday. The first is about the idea of vacuous truth. So look at this sentence. All the balls in the bowl are white. Currently, you look in the bowl and go, yep, I only see white balls. If I throw this orange one in there, however, now that formerly true sentence becomes false. So how do you distinguish? Well, if the sentence is true, its negation should be false. And contrary-wise, if the sentence is false, then its negation should be true. So what's the negation of all the balls in the bowl are white? Well, I've written the reinterpretation of that sentence as an if-then sentence here. If a ball is in the bowl, then it is a white ball. And you can turn that into formal logic language like this. For all x in the set of balls, I guess. X in the bowl implies X is in the set of white balls. Whoops. Well, okay, I can fit that in. X is in white. So how do we negate a for all that's got a if then after it? It should be an existential with the negation of an if then after it. Right, so what's the negation of an if one thing then another thing? It's a this is true and that is not. So I'm worried that this is not going to fit in underneath it here, but we'll try it. It should be, first of all, there is an X in the set of balls such that X is in the bowl and X is not in the set of white balls. How bad is that? It's slightly cut off, but I think you can, here, let me drop the bowl out of the way for a second so you can read that. So for all X in the set of balls, X is in the bowl implies X is a white ball, or X is an element of the set of white objects, I suppose. Negate it, it becomes, switch the quantifier. There is a ball, there is an X in balls, such that X is in the bowl and it's not white. So here's a situation where the sentence, all the balls in the ball, all the balls in the bowl are white. This is false because you look at its negation, which says there is a ball in the bowl which is not white, and that's true. If the negation is true, the original thing is false. If I take that orange ball out of there, then is it true that there is a ball in the bowl that is white? That is not, that is not white? No, that's not true. And so the original sentence is true. The weirdness comes when we say, all right, don't put any white balls in the bowl. In fact, don't put anything at all in the bowl. Now what do we do with this? Well, all the balls that are in the bowl are white. There aren't any balls in the bowl, so I suppose that's true. Look at the negation of that. There is a ball that's in the bowl that's not white. Really? Do you see one? I don't. It looks like the negation is false. And what does that make the original sentence? This guy is true. We just have no other way to deal with it than that. If the negation says there's some ball in here that's orange or purple or blue, it's a non-white color. And there isn't such a thing. So the negation is clearly false, which means the original thing, even though there's no balls in here at all, so that's weird, but the original thing is true. Every ball that is in there is white. I know. That's the idea of vacuous truth. We see that over and again. Next, the last thing really you need to do in section 3.2 is, well, honestly, this is going to be really easy because we've learned these terms in the unquantified version of logic, and we just need to throw quantifiers at them. But we need to understand what's the converse, what's the inverse, and what's the contrapositive when we have a quantified sentence, a universal conditional sentence. So given something that looks like for all x in some universe, p of x implies q of x. Oops. The converse of that is going to be, I should use colons to set these things off. The given sentence is that. The converse is for all x in your universe, q of x implies p of x. The inverse just like we said before, but except it's going to have a for all up front, is going to be for all x in the universe. Not p implies not q. And finally, the contrapositive. So I need a little more space for this one. It's a longer word. Well, that's when you do both things. You both put knots on the bits, but you also flip the order around. So in this new quantified world we're looking at, says for all x in the universe, the negation of q of x implies the negation of p of x. Maybe it would be good for us to make this real for some particular thing. Well, here's an example. It's probably a stupid one, but whatever, we'll go with it. For all x in the set of humans, suppose we go x likes Luther implies, whoops, I'm a little ahead of myself. X likes Luther implies X hates Diego. So that's our original, our given sentence. What's the converse of that? Well, that's easy. But maybe we should say this instead of informal logic sense. Try to say it informally. Okay, so here's an example. The first sentence is a universal conditional, and I've made a universal conditional here as a way to think about it. So our universal set is human beings. For all x in the humans, if x likes Luther, then x hates Diego. Silly, but it's something. Um, that's a kind of formalized way of thinking about it. What I would probably say it if I was speaking informally, I would say something like, everybody who likes Luther hates Diego. Does that sound good? It's the same meaning. What about some of these other things? What's the converse? This guy is the original. What's the converse? Well, it's easy in an informal way. Sorry, just said that completely wrong. It's easy in a formal way because all you have to do is switch these two phrases. So the converse would be, for all x in the set of humans, if x hates Diego, that implies that x likes Luther. Great, so how would you say that one informally? You'd say something like, everybody who hates Diego likes Luther. Those are very different meanings, aren't they? Everyone who likes Luther hates Diego. It's not the same thing as saying that everybody who hates Diego likes Luther. The inverse of our original guy, that's also an interesting one to try to analyze. The original one said, everybody in the set of humans, if they like Luther, then they hate Diego. The inverse should just put knots on this and on this. So it's, for all x in the set of humans, well, the quantifier doesn't change, but the content of the sentences does. It's, if x hates Luther, or at least doesn't like him, let's presume people either like or hate, and they don't have some state in between. X hates Luther implies, it's the worst arrow of all time, implies that X likes Diego. So finally, sort of the crown jewel of this stuff, the contrapositive, where you make both errors, and it's okay because the two errors cancel one another out. So, yeah, okay, we've got the for all x in the set of humans. Quantifier, again, does not change, but we need to both switch the order around and switch likes to hates and hates to likes. Right, so it'll become, if x likes Diego, that should imply that x hates Luther. Now let's try to compare the original and the contrapositive when we phrase them informally. This first one said, everyone who likes Luther hates Diego. What's this last guy say? Everyone who likes Diego hates Luther. Do those sound like they're the same? Because they are. So if the last thing about the statement and its contrapositive didn't sort of make sense to you, you might try this. If you change x likes y's negation to from, I originally said it as, well, let's say what the two alternatives are. I wrote it as x hates y. That's not really what the negation of x likes y is. The easier way to say it, the less drastic way to say it is to go with x doesn't like y. trying to remember how to spell that. Doesn't like Y. So if you go back to the statement and its contrapositive that I just had on the board and replace the hates things with just doesn't like, I bet you'll now agree that the statement and its contrapositive are the same. All right, so the next thing we need to do, and this is about section 3.3, is work out what happens when there are multiple quantifiers. And well, there's a couple of issues that you need to be clear about. One is the same quantifiers. If you have a couple of for alls, you can exchange order in them. Same quants can be interchanged. But different quantifiers cannot be switched. There's only two kinds of quantifiers, so all I'm saying is you can if you have a couple of for alls, you can change them in any order you want. But if there's an exists in there somewhere, it has to stay in its place. Different quants cannot be interchanged. As an example, I might say for all x, for all y, there exists z, and then I need some sentence that involves x, y, and z. We'll just call it p of x, y, and z. If I had a thing like that, it's perfectly fine to switch the for alls. That is, this would be completely equivalent to for all y, for all x, there exists z with p of x, y, z. But this guy can't switch past either of those. It's a totally different thing to put the exists in a different order in there. So when you have the same quantifier, switch them around however you like. But when you have different things, like a for all and exist, that's actually all we have. These things can't go past one another. You get totally different meanings. And I happen to like an example of this. I think I started this in class the other day. But let's look at the idea of just two quantifiers. One's a universal, one's existential. Actually, we'll do all four possibilities. For all exists, exists for all, and exists. With a sentence that is about humans, so it sort of brings it to the fore. What's the difference in meanings? I don't know if this feels like I'm being a little bit either sexist or cisgender biased or something, but I want you to think about this in the men love women sense. So for it'll be, well, actually, the sentence P of X and Y is going to be X loves Y. I'm mostly thinking of X as the male and Y as the female because actually that's weird because that's not how the chromosomes work. X chromosome is the woman and the Y chromosome is the man, but whatever. So I might say something like, for all X in the males, there exists Y in the females with the sentence P of XY being true. What does that mean? For every guy, there is a girl that the guy will love. Very nice sentiment, I suppose. But let's try monkeying around with these quantifiers some. For instance, what would it be like if we said for all X in the set of males, for all Y in the set of females, P of XY? And the top sentence was this nice sentiment that every guy can find a girl. Okay, but this one is a little weird. For all guys, for all girls, they're in love. It's just like universal 1960s, every guy loves every girl thing. That's, well, it's just not true. Very different change when you switch the actual quantifiers. How about we leave the quantifiers the same, but we change their order? Can I say there exists a Y in the set of females such that for all X in the set of males, P of XY? This is about scope change. Here the existential quantified Y has the scope through the rest of the sentence. Here the universally quantified X has its scope through the rest of the sentence. That changes things. So this is saying every guy can find a girl who he loves. This one is saying there is a woman. For all men, they love her. Quite a different meaning, right? This is just like the nice, oh, everybody can find somebody kind of sentiment. There's this one chick that everybody's crazy about. All right, what other ways can I monkey around with the quantifiers here? Well, okay, here's one. I have two universally quantified sentences here. For all X and M, for all Y and F, P of XY. What if we change that by just exchanging the order? For all Y in F, for all X in M, P of XY. Well, I suppose it changes the emphasis, but I would claim that these two sentences are really identical in their meaning. For all X, for all Y, X loves Y. That's universal love. This is the same thing with just thinking about it from the women's perspective, I suppose. For all Y, for every woman, for all men, for every woman, for every man, they love each other. I mean, the change of order here didn't do anything. So these guys are clearly equivalent. I guess I should use the symbol they use in the book. Whereas these guys are clearly inequivalent. Is there more that we can do with this? Well, I guess I did the for all exists, the exists for all, the for all. We should try the exists. Of course, I think it's clear at this point that exists in either order will be the same. This is such a horribly sad sentence. This is awful. So, I mean, you're talking about love, which you hope people actually love one another. But this says, well, there's this one guy. And this one girl, or at least one, there's maybe some, but there are a few people, there are a few males and a few women where the men love the women. It's awful. It's just like saying love is very, very rare almost. At the minimum, this would be true if there was exactly one male and exactly one female that were in love. I don't know. Not liking that so much. Yeah, so that's the gist of the idea about multiple quantifiers. Now, the last thing we have to do, and this will be quick, I think, is to figure out how to negate one of these things. Like, for instance, just informally, every guy can find a girl who he's in love with, right? How would you say that wasn't true? Let's leave that up there, but try to say, what's the negation of a sentence like that? Well, that was easy, right? Just put a big parenthesis around it and put a not in front. Got it. Now, but we want to do it better, right? So remember how negating a quantified thing worked. You just change the quantifier and negate the rest of it. So at one level, you can say, all right, we'll have a for all turning into an exists. And then we will negate the rest of it. Well, what's the rest of it? Now it's, there exists a y in f, so that p of xy. Well, that is something we can carry through more, right? So this has already been switched into an exists. If we negate this existential thing, it becomes a for all. And finally, the not applies to the thing at the end, the sentence that x loves y. So let's see if we believe this. This original sentence said something like, every man can find a woman so that he loves her, or so that they're in love. This one says, there is a guy, so for all women, they don't love him, or he doesn't love them, or, it doesn't work. Yeah, this is a very optimistic sentence. It says everybody in the set of males can find somebody in the set of females that they're going to be in love with. And this is telling you, no, that's nonsense. There's this one misanthropic dude who, for every single female in the whole universe, they're not going to be in love. I think the truth lies somewhere in between these extremes. Right? There's, maybe not. Yeah, no, I bet this is the true one. There's got to be some guy who's so horrible that nobody will love him, and this is probably the false one. The idea that saying everybody, without the not on it, everybody in the set of males can find us a mate. It's quite unlikely. However you prefer to interpret this, because this comes down to your level of optimism, these two things are negations. And so I want you to be clear about how you negate something that's got multiple quantifiers in it. How does that work out? Well, in a nutshell, it's this. Go down the list of quantifiers and turn them all to the other type. So switch all the quantifiers, and then negate the final thing. I don't know, what we call the thing that comes after it. Negate the rest. I would say that. This is just going to always work, because the way we learned this is to negate a sentence, you change the quantifier and then negate the rest of it. And so when you apply that iteratively, when you have to negate the rest of it, you're switching the quantifier and negating that. And so we come up with this. If there were 3 or even 4 strings of for alls there exists, for alls there exists. It's just switch them all and put a knot on that thing that comes at the end. All right, well that actually brings us to the end of section 4.3. I'm not sure what section it is, but we're finished with the stuff that we're going to have a worksheet on. So cool. See you Tuesday. Have a good rest of your weekend and Monday.